Thank you. Andrea Jenkyns.
Into the Northern Ireland question, really. The Joint Committee will play a crucial role in the transition period and the future relationship. What measures can be taken to ensure the committee reflects the political concerns of the Northern Irish communities? I'll start with Anna.
So on the kind of political side of this, I can't really respond to that. But in terms of the Joint Committee, it will have a considerable task in terms of customs. These solutions that we need now are not the typical solutions as we've talked about. We need to streamline procedures, preferably under the existing framework. The only thing I could think of in terms of customs here is to ensure that it has input from customs officials. Very often when you have a free trade agreement or other international agreement, it's done on a trade level, on a ministerial level, or whatever, but the customs authorities are not actually included, or they provide input but they're not part of the negotiations, which makes it much more difficult to then apply and implement these provisions. So in terms of the Joint Committee, I would strongly suggest that customs officials and customs authorities are involved in these discussions on a regular basis in terms of making it then easy and quick to implement this and make it actually work on the ground.
Okay. Ryan, thank you.
So I think while the Joint Committee sort of sits at the top and the UK will be putting in its representatives, what sits underneath that and the process for taking decisions into the Joint Committee will be up to the UK government to decide.
Okay.
And so
what could that look like then?
Well, I think, take for example something that was proposed by the previous government. We made a proposal for, I think, what was termed then the Stormont Lock or something along those lines, but it was essentially to ensure that any new rules added to the previous draft of the Northern Ireland Protocol would have to have been approved by the Northern Ireland Executive or Assembly and the institutions there. So that was very clear that they built in we proposed a process for saying if any new rule wanted to be added or proposed, it would have to go through approval in Northern Ireland, and then the UK representatives in the Joint Committee would take a stance in the committee on that rule and regulation being added to the protocol based on what Northern Ireland institutions had decided. So that is just one example of how Northern Irish views could be fed in. And so you could imagine building a similar kind of process around certain decision points or certain issues. And so it's really up to the UK government and obviously Parliament to feed into this in terms of how that process is designed and what the key stakeholders are that need to be consulted.
Okay, thank you. Jack, have you got any thoughts on this?
In terms of supervising the Joint Committee, you need the sort of mechanism that Raoul's talking about. You need a combination of things. You need some kind of formal legal power, like a scrutiny reserve or some kind of legal veto of what the UK government can or can't do in the committee. But then you need also to ensure that whatever that there's a kind of a conduit pipe of information that the government supplies to Parliament so that that position can be scrutinised well in advance and the veto can be exercised. And then the most challenging probably is you need the kind of informal scrutiny arrangements to work effectively so that there can be a kind of cooperative process that makes sure that Parliament is on board with whatever government is doing in the Joint Committee. And because we haven't done that sort of thing before, I think that's quite challenging to imagine how that would work in practice.
That'll lead me on to the second question in a moment, actually. Catherine,
I was just going to add to that. What is surprising about the WAB, the Withdrawal Implementation Bill, is just how little there is on joint committees. There's just one short section on section 35 about ministerial co-chairs of the Joint Committee. What is really missing is if you look at the text of the withdrawal agreement itself, you've obviously got provisions on the Joint Committee in Article 164, but in addition, there are provisions on specialised committees which are going to be set up. There are 6 of them, and one of them specifically is on Northern Ireland, as you ask. Yeah. And I think it's extremely unfortunate that there is a total lack of engagement, even powers, in the WAB as to how any of this is going to be rolled out in the UK system.